I believe I was third. Robbie was fifth, and Eric was sixth, and I'm making up numbers. Johnny was everybody was in the top 10. And we have never had a race, I believe, that the whole Canadian team was in the top 10, and we had a podium, and there was 4 or 5 of us. So that was, and I just remember you train as a team, you do everything, but it's individual results. But that day, even though, Eric for sure wanted to be on the podium and whatever, but everybody was in the top 10, and it was really the only day that we all got to celebrate as a team. It was the only day we've ever had. There's always even, with Eric and I on the podium, Dustin Cook went out. So then you're celebrating, but there's one guy, and you muster up courage and strength, and you'd be happy for your teammates and whatever else. But that was the one true day that everybody was excited and happy, and we really achieved what we were all trying to achieve, which is just be good.
Hello and welcome to episode number 61 of the Rose Bros podcast. This episode we are joined by Manuel Osborne-Paradis for part 2 of our conversation. Born in North Vancouver, British Columbia, Manny grew up racing for the Whistler Mountain Ski Club. His first World Cup podium came in November 2006 in Lake Louise, Alberta, Canada, and his first victory was at the downhill in Kvitfjell in March 2009. Manny spent 13 seasons on the World Cup circuit, competing in 4 Olympic Games, 6 World Championships with 2 downhill wins, 1 Super G win, and 11 podium finishes. Since our last conversation, Manny made the decision to retire from the sport of alpine ski racing to focus on his business career as well as his family of 2 young kids and his wife Lana. Manny currently lives in Invermere, British Columbia, where he enjoys ski touring, golf, mountain biking, and a variety of sports. We sat down for a smooth cup of Rose Bros coffee and talked about retiring from ski racing, transitioning to the next phase of life, what gives an athlete a competitive edge, reflections on a career in sport, the state of Alpine Canada, future plans, and a lot more. Also, if you get a chance to leave a review of the episode in the Apple directory, it will go a long way to helping the show. Enjoy. Manny, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks a lot for doing this.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. I know you're busy with family and all that, and we're here in your awesome house. And how are you spending your days now that you're retired?
It's busy. I feel like I'm a busy person. So, I'm in school, entrepreneurial management at Royal Roads, a couple years left to a business degree. So I'm just doing that as a great opportunity to stay at home and then see my kids grow and not be on the road. And it seems like I have a sprouting ski business that is starting with some hosting, hopefully, once these lockdowns subside, and just with teaching, a little bit of coaching, but more teaching. Like I prefer to work on actual skiing and not, going around the gates as much. And that seems to be going really well. And it's been a really good side gig while going to school and hanging out with the family, and real estate and stocks market, everything. I feel like I'm busy every day.
Did you buy GameStop?
I did not buy GameStop. I watched it. I watched it go up. I watched it go down. A lot to learn from the short positions and just the power of social media and stuff like that. But it was interesting how that whole debacle unfolded, and Robinhood trying to needing to find capital and everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're really, I think the pandemic has allowed people to fully buy into the internet and the powers of media and social media and everything, and we were reluctant, if it was the older people that are running larger corporations. If we're talking about productions and stuff like that, sure, they were buying into that, but they weren't totally buying into the powers of working from home, the powers of not spending capital on brick and mortar and such like that. And there will be an ebb and a flow, but now I think the buy-in's there, and the buy-in of the power of being able to reach the masses. So anyways, yeah. I thought that was pretty crazy.
And you're not planning on skiing down Mount Nelson anytime soon, now that you're free of the racing commitments?
No. I've actually noticed over the last 6 months, the decompression of my body. There's just days where I wake up and I'm like, I feel terrible today. And I tell my wife and she's like, well, what do you feel like? Do you feel sick or whatever? And I'm like, I literally feel like my body is just coming down from 2 decades of fight or flight. And there's just days that you don't have to do that anymore. And it doesn't know, it's like recalibrating. It's pretty crazy. And it was easy to get into the mindset of chucking yourself down the hill in my 20s. But as I got into my 30s and the family and everything, it took a lot more mental energy and just commitment. And I feel like, like the body is just like the mind, everything. Yeah. It needs time to come off of that and just feel normal. And I mean, also ending my career with an injury too, that was just like one more shield that it had. And so it's an interesting phenomenon that I feel some days. Like I just wake up and I'm totally, my body is beat down and I feel like I'm just trapped inside of it for the day.
How has the transition been? You got a lot on the go, but has it been fun, easy, hard, enjoyable?
It's a kind of a tricky question because I don't know how it would have gone under normal circumstances. I mean, I was kind of not forced into it with the pandemic, but with my surprise meniscus surgery that set me back 6 months. And then really once lockdowns were happening, I was in this gym where we're sitting now, and I was working out on my own, and it was okay. But what I really needed was a rehab program. I needed the physio every day and all of that stuff. And it just seemed like this year was unattainable, and that was going to be too many years off snow. And really, if I'm coming back, I wanted to come back for 2 seasons, coming back for just 1 Olympic season and trying to be your best for 1 year, contract wise and emotionally and family oriented and everything. It just didn't make sense. So, as I digress and talk about the reasons why, I mean, I go back to being, there's not an ounce in my body that it doesn't think that it was a good idea to retire when I did. My leg's good, but it's not great. I can ski every day. I can do stuff, but it gets sore, and there's a lot of strength that needs to be built up. Emotionally, I think it's tough. I mean, you go from really knowing yourself and knowing what you do every day to not really knowing. It's the unknown. And I'm sure everybody has gone through it once, if not multiple times in their life. Yeah, for sure. With leaving high school and then trying to figure out where they want to go to university or what they want to do with their lives. And, having the opportunity to know myself that much more at 37 before I have to make those decisions makes it a lot easier. But, I also have 2 houses and a family and bills to pay. And lots of bills to pay, right? So fortunately in ski racing, it's not if, but when you get injured. So you always make sure that you have savings for a couple of years, because you have to grind it out when you're injured, and it's not necessarily, people aren't knocking on your door to give you money when you're grinding in the gym trying to come back from whatever. Yeah. So I've been set up for it and everything's good, but I go back, there's some days that are harder, but at the end of the day, I mean, I have the best relationship with my son, who's a year on Friday, and it's like,
that's cool.
Yeah, like I didn't have that with my daughter at all. She was born and I hit the road, and we didn't start hanging out till she was like 5 months old. Mm-hmm. This little guy, I've seen him every single day of his life so far.
When you were racing, did you find that you had other interests outside the sport all along, and that you were being pulled different ways, or were you always super focused on racing only?
To my detriment, I always had other passions. To my detriment, I think the single focus would have definitely helped me. I mean, I know guys that are much better racers than I ever was, that are great single focus people, and they have a nasty transition outside of skiing, and like who they are within their identity and all of that stuff. It's a steep cliff. But within my racing career, it was to my detriment, and I feel like that's where, like, there was a time that I hired an agent, and it didn't really work that well. Like, they take a lot of money and they don't really find much for you, because, if there's one person better in Canada or wherever in their agency, that person gets everything. Mm-hmm. That I should have, at that time, I probably should have gone around and found a manager, even a buddy, and just paid them like a salary, and been like, yo, your job is to keep me on track, to be the squeaky wheel amongst the team and the people that I need around you. And also, anything that you find me, you get 20%. So you could bump your salary pretty quick. I think that would have helped because I think, just having, if for say I had a great idea or not a great idea or whatever, an idea that I didn't have the time commitment to, having a sound voice to be like, no, you don't, or let me help you with that. Let's see this go through. I know like Axel on Spindle has people like that, and he's had a great transition, a great career after with starting his clothing company and working with Porsche and all these other companies where he had his brother and his father really helping him transition to those and he could still keep his focus solely on ski racing. I mean, he also did a huge development, a four-story development in Innsbruck during his career. But those are pieces where you need, a sidekick. You may have the capital, you may have within our sport, we have 4 or 5 months where it's like super downtime. You're just working out, playing sports. And then the other times you're busy 24/7. So how do you scratch that itch? And then also be able to just be able to leave it. And I think that's always been the hard part is Mike Janik and I ran a foundation for 11 years, definitely dabbled in real estate. At one point, I think I owned 7 properties and really? That was time consuming. And, I had good managers and whatever, but
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but there was no need to own that many. And maybe I didn't do it. I really should have done it where, I owned a lot of strata buildings and such where I thought that was easier, but it took a lot of the capital away. And so there's been learning curves and whatever, but
it's cool. You're actually interesting to talk to.
Well, thanks.
You also had a transition outside of sport. It's been kind of smooth for you in a way. You've got all your business stuff and family and
yeah. Well, family too. Like it's that takes commitment as well. And that's what prompted us to move back to Invermere was the family and making life a little bit more simple, going back and forth to Calgary and being gypsies within our own world when then I'm already going to be traveling all over.
The end of the day, it's helped you.
It's totally helped me. Yeah. I mean, if we're going to look at life as a century long or hopefully, it's going to help me a lot. And being multi-passionate is totally a curse. But at the same time, just even I was in an executive leadership course the last 3 months and I made a promise to my team there that I wouldn't act on anything for 48 hours. And, that's already been a great tool of just like literally not acting on anything, just being like, okay, that's an idea. If that's still in my head in 48 hours. But when you have the time, sometimes I just start phoning people right away. And a lot of these ideas are great, but I feel like it's making sure that there's large enough margins.
All that stuff.
Do you know enough people to connect with it? And then how much time do you have? I think like really for myself, it's writing down how many hours a week can I put towards something? And does that now make sense? And that's maybe where I lacked in the past was just like sitting down and saying, okay, this is going to take this much time, or this is how much time a week I have for this endeavor. Yes, sometimes you just don't have the time.
Oh, for sure.
Good idea or not.
Long story short, you're happy. Retirement's been good.
Retirement's been great. Yeah, retirement's been great, even with a pandemic. The home time and being set up in a small town where we can still mountain bike. The ski hills have been open, been able to work a little bit. I think all in all, there's no complaints on our side. There's a lot of hardship in the world right now, and I think we have definitely made the best of it for being an unemployed ex-athlete student.
You are starting a business? Are you looking to start a business then, or kind of in between?
Yeah, I am. I'm in the middle right now of taking my level 4 instructor.
Okay.
So that's with the CSIA, and it's internationally recognized, and there's a whole bunch of countries that recognize the level 4 and have their own level 4s.
Yep.
I just thought it was a great opportunity, being that there's not much going on this year, and just with school, that it would be tough, but it also helps me with my rehab. Like if I didn't have any reason to go on snow and practice skiing and whatnot. So it really helped my return to snow. Yeah, it's been great. I've really, being so European based, I didn't know the ski world and the people around it in Canada. And I've really gotten to know like the people at Head Canada, the people at CSIA and all these ski instructors, the head ski instructor here in Kicking Horse and Kimberley and Lake Louise, and getting to know another world within another layer and within the ski industry has been really rewarding. And also just getting to know other people that I can collaborate with to create a business. And I mean, I think just, it seems like there's a bunch of people that have been up at the mountain here that I've been able to ski with, and I've seen their transition over the years. And I know there's a bunch of guys here that really would like a back country, not like back, like inbounds, but Tate and Bowl style ski lesson, weekly thing where we really go and work on aggressive skiing and how do we get better. It doesn't really seem to be a great opportunity for men and women like that intermediate to expert skier to get any better, and unless you start paying for private lessons or whatever. Right. So there does seem to be an area there that would be really fun, and as a 4-time Olympian and somebody that skied a lot, I think that could match up really well where, I may not be better than them. They may be like very top-notch skiers. Right. I'm not saying that I'm the best skier out there.
You're just being modest, yeah.
To have the level 4 designation, to be really able to spot what we need to work on, to understand what the ski needs to do in the snow and how to work from the bottom of the ski all the way up, and to put a real lesson plan together. I think, there's a lot of people that could really achieve the next step within skiing, where I think we get complacent when we're pretty good skiers. And I mean, even so in the level 4, I'm working with all these other level 3s that are becoming level 4s. And I personally have gotten to be a better skier.
Right.
And so I feel like, okay, great. Well, I went to the last Olympics and I'm still improving. Yeah. So there's an area for everybody to improve. It doesn't matter how good you are. And I think what a great opportunity. So yeah, we'll see how that grows. But I know there's lots of interest in Ontario, lots of interest in Quebec, a bunch. I'm just going to start naming all the provinces, but there is a bunch in Alberta and BC. And so building something here at Pano and then hitting the road a little bit, I think there's a lot of opportunity to help people with their goals and also just ski a bunch.
Related to skiing, then, the business in that area, potentially.
Yeah. This arm, I don't know. There's a lot of other opportunities surrounding that I'm not really going to bring up because they're not concrete plans yet, but yeah, there's a direction there. I mean, it's, unfortunately it's not as scalable as I would like, but I think diving into that industry to see where there are scalable relevancies, I think that's, you don't, I only know ski racing. So let's get introduced to the world of instructing. Let's get introduced to the masters world and the young racers and stuff, and just see what we got in Canada. And then I feel like you can really dive into the true gaps of needs and where people want to improve.
I always thought there might be an opportunity in like the high level, maybe high price point sort of guiding or instructing. It sounds like something along those lines, maybe,
Yeah. Well, I mean, already there's groups that have asked me to take them over to Chamonix, Wengen, how can we host at World Cup events? Yeah. And with the level 4, I mean, then we can go skiing. I can put together a really great experience, but there's also some foundation there where we can work on getting better at skiing. Yeah. It's not just touring around and seeing the mountains. So no, there's definitely an opportunity there, and there's lots of people that are willing to pay for an amazing experience.
High level.
The high level. Yeah, and sure. We were doing that already in the racing world. I mean, when we take members of Audi or Mackenzie Investments and you host them or take them to an experience on the mountain and stuff like that, people already love it. And there are companies in Europe that I can work with that already have, like, people out of Munich and out of Innsbruck that already have a great client list that want to come here and vice versa. So it's pretty, I think it could be a pretty easy transition to that. It's just understanding that, it's only 4 or 5 months of the year.
Right.
So what are we going to do for the rest of the time? And hey, if that makes enough, then I hang out with my kids the rest of the time. I'm not too worried. I mean, I'm like, there's also a work-life balance that I feel like is definitely a piece of this puzzle that I'm trying to put together.
You ever thought about taking over the local ski club or starting a ski club?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think Mark Sharp does a really great job here, and Helmet does a great job. I mean, we're very lucky to have 2 ski clubs. I'd be happy to help clubs with fall training, spring training, help them out, and that would attract more people. There used to be a huge Japanese presence here that really helped the preseason. Yeah, there was like 60 of them that would come over, and that kind of went awash. And so I think there's opportunities to bring people here and really be able to help the mountain, help myself, help ski racing. And there are already clubs that have reached out about potentially doing fall training already. And can I help this process? And we came up with an idea the other day that, lots of these parents want to get better at skiing too. So maybe we can do a camp where, the kids come and we do morning training with the kids. And then in the afternoon, we train with the parents, and the parents have a camp as well.
Yeah.
And really add more value. So it's not a ski club-ish thing, but
right.
it's definitely like how can we utilize every hour of the day and give everybody an add value?
You have a huge network. I would imagine it's a little easier for you to get something going like that than the average Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, in the ski racing world, I know
a ton of people.
I don't know if I may know the most, actually. I feel like I'm fairly social.
It seems like everybody knows Manny.
It's
seriously.
Yeah, that's funny. But I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that I don't know, but I've heard of them. But it's a small world. It is a small world. But in Europe, I've been very friendly with everybody, and I've worked very well with the Austrians, the Swiss, the Germans. I'm friends with lots of the people within those organizations, and like the Italians and Slovenians and everybody. Yeah. So, no issues being able to phone any of those nations and working with any of those nations, really. Yeah, a lot of those guys just need help too. I mean, if the Swiss or the Austrian need help hill space in Canada or anything, like, they know who to call, and I would definitely help them. And those are great little just one-offs that if you're just there and you know the ins and outs of the system and who you need to call, they just need the help with that. So, yep. But that's not like a job. That's great that I'm able to help them, and I'm sure down the road they'll help me. And I think it pays to try and be nice to as many people as you can, like, down the road. And it's nice to be liked as well. Yeah. So might as well try and be nice. Not nice to everybody, I'm sure.
You've had a few months to look back on your career now, a little bit, time to reflect. Do you have a favorite moment from your racing career that you think back on?
Yeah, I think I'd probably kind of go back and forth, because Alpine Canada just put like the top 100 moments together. Yeah. And I actually felt like my top moment never made the top 100, even though I made the top 10 with Eric. That was great. So that would be one of the top moments, which was his first and my third in St. Moritz for the World Championships. But I actually think if you go back,
it was Whistler Cup.
Well, no, it wasn't that early, but I think it was in like 2009. I think it might have been 2009, 2008. It was in Kvitfjell, and I can't remember if it was the day I won or if the day I came third.
I remember that.
But because there was a back-to-back races and it was the same weekend. But I believe I was third. Robbie was like fifth, and Eric was sixth, and I'm making up numbers. Johnny was everybody was in the top 10. And we have never had a race, I believe, that the whole Canadian team was in the top 10, and we had a podium. Yeah. And there was four or five of us. So those and I just remember you train as a team, you do everything, but it's individual results. But that day, even though, Eric for sure wanted to be on the podium and whatever, but that day, everybody was in the top 10, and it was really the only day that we all got to celebrate as a team. It was the only day we've ever had. There's always, like, even, with Eric and I on the podium, Dustin Cook went out. And, right, so then you're celebrating, but there's one guy, and, you muster up courage and strength, and you just you'd be happy for your teammates and whatever else. But that was the one true day that everybody was excited and happy, and we really achieved what we were all trying to achieve, which is just be good. So to me, that's by far my top moment. Yeah, unfortunately, that didn't even make the top 100 moments, but it was a tough. That selection committee had a really tough.
Yeah, for sure, a lot of history.
Yeah, and with I think maybe if I had with my third, that's important to me because it was a team thing, but
yeah,
it maybe isn't that important to history.
100 years of racing history.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
How about your worst moment?
My worst moment?
Breaking your leg.
That's up there for sure. But I was skiing fast, and I mean, I was skiing faster than I had ever skied. And sometimes when you're skiing fast, you've got a new speed, and so that just comes with the territory. Unfortunately, I just didn't get enough races in to adapt to the new speed that I had progressed through with the summer. I don't know what the worst would be. I mean, there's just so many. Ski racing, like it's more like the amount of shitty races you have to good races. Like there's just so many. I think when I blew my knee, that was a really bad day because I hadn't been skiing that well, and then I was winning the race, and I crashed like 8 gates to the bottom, and it was all flat, and I had the most speed. Like I would have won the race. So I went from winning the race to injured, and it just happened that it was like on the worst day that I could have gotten injured, because if I had skied one more day, I would have skied more than half the season. So all my contracts would have paid out full. But because it was that day, all my contracts paid out half. So I also didn't get prize money for winning. I got paid half of what I would have gotten paid in a normal year. But I also got injured. If I got injured the next day, I would have been skied more of the season. And at that time, there was an injury clause where I hadn't skied enough, so I didn't get injury status as well.
You telling me that,
so when I came back, I was like ranked outside the top 100 and all of that stuff. My ranking would have been solidified if I had been able to keep my world ranking. So it was literally like just on the worst day. It was on the worst day. And so that would have been a really bad day.
Yes.
That was a bad day.
But you build resiliency on days like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about all the bad days is I mean, there was just so many, but I can't say that one was worse than another. Like that was a bad day, but there was a lot of cumulative crap that went on, but they were all just days.
Yeah.
I feel like even the good days, you're other than the celebratory days, like just the good days, you're grinding. It's always a grind. Like that's why people say, "Oh, aren't you lucky to be a ski racer?" And you're like, "Man, yeah, but I took the fun out of this a long time ago."
Yeah. When you look back, what do you think made you more successful long term versus some of your peers? Like you went to 4 Olympic Games, you raced for a decade or 2 on the national team. Is there anything you kind of point towards that really helped you?
I think I was committed. I was fully all in. I've seen a lot of guys not be all in. They second guess. I second guess a lot of the things that we were doing. But just for example, like when BC Alpine moved their team to Invermere, I just got on the Greyhound and came here.
Yeah.
When we moved to Calgary, I just moved to Calgary. There was no ifs, ands, or buts in my head. I just did it because that's what we needed to do. And I saw a lot of resistance from a lot of guys that I thought, well, and they didn't want to do it or whatever. And then they would keep on the team they'd stay on the team for a year or 2, and then they'd just be dismissed or whatever. And you're like, you're totally just not invested into this. So why would you even stay on the team and then fight this? Like, this is just, This is an easy, yes. I mean, we have to be on the road 6 months of the year anyways and whatnot. So there were just commitments that I think I saw a lot of people resist, subconsciously or consciously.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was the one thing was I would really try hard not to resist things, not to resist, like when I was in Chile one year and then the coach said, I think you should stay another 3 weeks. There's another team coming and you should stay with them. And just to not be like, man, like I got a life at home and like just say, well, if that's what we think, like if I'm on the cusp of like a breakthrough or whatever, then we're just going to do that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the decisions that you don't like are usually the right ones. Mm. I would usually just give myself the time to really decide if I didn't like it or not later on, the hindsight. So yeah, I think that's where I leveled up. And yeah, I mean, my mental capacity, I think or mental toughness was tougher than a lot of guys because I was by far never the best skier. But I could lock and load on race day and it just would work out.
That's like Pat Biggs. I talked to him last week on the podcast. Mm-hmm. He admitted he wasn't maybe the best skier, but he just persevered and had a great career. And that's one thing he pointed to was the mental side. Oh yeah,
the mental. I mean, the top 30 are like mentally. The hard part I think in ski racing is that once the guys make the World Cup, the only thing really differentiating the top 30 is mental toughness. And the downfall is what differentiates the results is the work that people have put in before they got there. Yeah. You can put all the work you want in once you're on the World Cup, but playing catch up is just a nightmare.
Really?
And it's not easy. Axel didn't just, for example, Axel just didn't make the World Cup and then start working hard, right? Like he worked really hard before he was the best.
For sure.
And that pays the dividend. That's always what I noticed is it was like, I was very fortunate that the Dujon, when I was a BC team here, like literally I would ride my bike to the gym at Valley Fitness Center. We'd work out every day before high school. Mm-hmm. And that's just what we did. And then when I made the national team, I was strong enough that I went straight from the BC8 team to the World Cup team. And I was racing World Cup that year. And Johnny Kuchera was doing the same thing because Pete Rybaric was beating him down in the gym in Alberta. And we just had this, we had foundation before we got to the team and before we got anywhere. And that you can't, you need that. You can't make it up. There's not enough years to make it up. No. And I would have to say that we had a pretty good foundation until 2010 when the team started not knowing itself and losing money. And, are we using the sports center? Are we not? And we had 3-4 years there where we had a lull. And it was because we weren't building on our foundation as much. We were relying on it, and it just didn't work out. We weren't moving forward, and it hurt us for a long time. I mean, lots of people lost their careers, and Eric and I persevered and had long careers, but we had tough seasons for a while there.
When you look at someone like Axel Lund-Svindal, does he stand out as someone who's mentally superior?
Absolutely. Yeah. He's a mental dark horse.
Why?
He's so good.
Does he work on it or was he born that way?
I think you're born that way a little bit. And also you work on it.
It's a muscle.
No, I think, I mean, I don't know exactly, but I know one thing that his dad was a masters racer. And I think his dad taught him a lot. I know one thing that him and I had talked about that really stuck with me is that he said that, he used to watch his dad race, and his dad was not the best skier out there, but he had the most intensity, and that intensity stuck with him. And he said, whenever I'm going to do something, I'm just doing it with the most intensity that I can. Those are those things that stick with you when you're 7 years old. I mean, oddly enough, and this will sound just ridiculous because I've noticed that I've had to back to it this year, but bagged lunches.
Yep.
I grew up Whistler, single mom. We didn't eat at the lodge.
For sure.
I ate my bagged lunch, and it was always gross, and your sandwich bread
PB&J.
It was just, and I remember always being like, man, when I'm going to make this ski racing thing work, because I'm not eating these bagged lunches anymore. Mm-hmm. This is just, and it was a real, it sounds silly now, but as a kid, you're like, well, you got to find your motivation somewhere.
Yeah.
And it was like, man, I gotta have enough money, and I'm just gonna this is ridiculous. Then I went ski touring with a friend of mine that's a lawyer at the beginning of the year this year, and I texted her and I said, I pretty much, the backbone of my career was based on not eating a bag lunch.
Yeah.
And now that we're ski touring and I have to make this bag lunch, like,
Here you are.
here I am back at it, you know, like this is the worst. Anyways,
Yeah.
she said, you know, you got to suck it up. Like
Yeah.
she gave me a pep talk, but whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Like I know lots of people with with silly stories, but seeing his dad with intensity or myself, I mean, I watched lots of great racers just with no mental capacity, just go away, or really great racers have one bad season and be like, this isn't fun anymore.
Right.
And you're like, what? Like you've got all the talent in the world.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of these guys I'm friends with still. And now like in hindsight, they look back and they're like, I had all this talent. I can't believe I just quit because I had no perseverance. They just didn't have it for whatever reason. And then, you know, they hit real life and they're like, now here I am persevering in school.
Yeah.
Man, I should have, I wish I knew how to persevere 3 years ago. So yeah, anyways, it's always interesting what people pick out of it.
Yeah, for sure. You know a lot. Like you knew Herman Meyer.
Yeah. I raced with him and I would chat because him and I would inspect back in the back of the pack. So we would chat then.
For someone like Herman, what stood out to you with a guy like that?
Well, I mean, I only knew Herman after his motorcycle accident, so he wasn't tip-top shape.
Okay.
But I mean, it's kind of like
Same
Matthias
thing.
Meyer or Foyts. These guys grew up in it. Like, you know, I think a lot of these great racers in Canada, they just don't see how important it is because it's not important in our culture, ski racing. You know, where those guys grew up with it being important. And that makes a big difference. That's one of the biggest difference. Like Eric grew up with it in his family being important. I might be one of the best racers that had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
I only found the importance later on in life. Like really once I started racing World Cup, like I didn't even know the guys' names or anything. I knew like 3 guys on the World Cup when I was racing World Cup. And Jeff Hume was out there being like, you don't know that guy? That guy's like 5th in the world. And I'm like, man, like I've literally never watched a World Cup race in my life.
Yeah.
My stepdad would buy like World Cup winning runs. And so I like knew 5 guys that would win races, like Von Groningen and Herman won everything. That's who I knew. That's it, right? So I didn't know anybody, but I think it's like, that's what I think. They just understand the importance. It's important in their country. It's important. I mean, it's why you can get great servicemen for skis and stuff from those countries. It's not that, you know, I had a good French-Canadian serviceman, but they're few and far between. Somebody that truly is okay making like minimum wage, tuning skis and being on the road, but they're like, man, this is very important.
Yes.
This is important work.
Seems like someone like Herman Meyer would have that mental edge.
Any race day guy. I can't say that you can separate Bodie to Herman to Axel to Hirscher to Felix. Like, you know, they all figured it out in their own way. The more it mattered, the better they were.
Yeah, for sure.
That's confidence building. That's putting in all the effort when nobody's watching.
For sure.
That's all that is.
The last time we talked, you were thinking about doing the CEO job for Alpine Canada. I guess that's put on hold, but...
Yeah, well, I applied. I applied. You know, I made a couple rounds or whatever, but listen, like I think it was important to apply because people know that I'm interested.
Yep.
I think I brought up a lot of great points and I influenced a bunch of outcomes, and I think it was a really great process of going through the hiring process of a CEO position and putting together the appropriate resumes and cover letters and the interview process and really, you know, putting together a strategic plan for Alpine Canada, and all of that stuff was really great practice for myself, but also I think it allowed the board to hire more accordingly and to just see where instead of me coming in with a complaint of everything, that I came in with solutions that I thought were great solutions and I offered them essentially for free. Yeah. And I hope the organization is better because of it. And it's definitely something that I wouldn't say never say never, because I would love a position like that. But in the same breath, I just hope that Therese is friggin' amazing at her job and just gets better and better and better and stays there for an eternity. And if I can help consult, be a part of, you know, their hosting program, or to to really help them in any capacity on snow, whatever they would like. I'm totally there for the organization, but they need to reach out to me and they need to see it fit and within their vision, right? It's not my vision anymore. So it was a great process, but obviously it was, I kind of understood where the outcome would lie, but I also wasn't foolish into thinking, like I did say, I mean, the first thing that I would do as CEO would be hire a true COO, that could run the operations. And I do think that with the proper figurehead, Alpine Canada could really hit the ground running to acquire really great sponsors and partners and to really help the Podium Club and to take the time to put together a really solid pipeline and get rid of redundancies and really find an efficient way to get athletes from their ski clubs up to the national team and really figure out what makes a ski racer good and where their deficiencies are and how to assess racers not on where their world rankings are now, but where we can get them to and then how to help us to collaborate across the nation with good ideas. But that's one job. That's almost more than one job, but that's one job. And then there's the operations of Alpine Canada. So I felt like that's where I saw it as what I thought was where the job of the CEO should lie, shouldn't actually lie. And then there should be a CEO that could really actually take Alpine Canada and run it properly and along with their CFO, be able to balance their budget without needing to grovel for last minute cash or to whatever they need to do. I know there's a million ways. It depends on the year, but I think that the board knows where, you've given me a soapbox, or I keep going on it, but
that's great. That's the idea.
Yeah, the board knows where my ideas lie and where I think the efforts should be. But at the end of the day, I mean, if Alpine Canada doesn't have enough money for two big titles, then they got to work with what they've got as well. It's going to be a tough road, I think, without the Olympics, without Calgary pursuing the Olympic Games, and then obviously with COVID and everything. So we'll see. I mean, there's certain businesses that are superseding their targets, and other businesses that are going to struggle for a long time, and it's going to be an interesting juggle effect around to see if Alpine Canada can piece together the appropriate partners that really have some long-term stature within their markets.
Around 2010, Alpine Canada was rolling. Things were going really well. You guys were winning and everything was good. And then things kind of fell apart. To get it back to that level, what do you think's missing Alpine Canada these days? Is it development? Is it a bigger budget? Is it leadership?
Let's not dive too deep into what they've done wrong, because it's a different administration and whatnot. But there's a lot of money that came in before the Olympics that was short-term cash. Like, hey, if you do this, we'll give you this. And they lost sight of really what makes a skier compete well. We were getting millions of dollars to try and figure out what kind of wax or grind we should have on Whistler Mountain, and we hired people for that and all of this stuff. We're really there's already wax companies, and the ski companies are spending way more than we would ever do, and it's nonsense. What would have been better money spent would have been like business class tickets for the racers, or their own bedrooms to be able to decompress, or literally we were spending millions on one thing, and they forgot about the racers. Anything shiny got money. Yeah, and then after 2010, I mean, you forget 2008 had hit. Contracts were kind of still going until 2011, but it was just a tough time. It was a really tough time. There was no contingency plan. There was no planning for when the money dried up. It was just a rough time. I think it was just rough. There was a lot of people that left the administration that we needed, and then there was just a bunch of people hired that didn't really fit the mold. And yeah, it was unfortunate, because it's you're the racer and you rely on them to be the organization you needed them to be, and they just weren't. But we've been trying to dig ourselves out, and I think they've done a good job. And I think our new board, I'm not saying the old boards didn't do a good job. I think they did, but I think this new board is showing real enthusiasm, and they've got street cred within Canada. The hiring process doesn't happen overnight, right? It's picking the right people and finding the right mold. And, once they do that, then they can figure out their long-term vision. And I mean, there was a time where when we didn't have any money, we just got rid of the development team every year. Right. And it's like, yeah, Manny and Eric and Johnny and Francois and these guys they'll make us our money, and but you can't get rid of the development team that many years in a row, because then now we're kind of stuck in this lull where we have a super young team and nobody's really excelling. They have the potential, but it probably would have been a lot easier if they had mentors to help them.
I've had Mark Sharp on the podcast, Ken Reed on the podcast, everyone kind of has their feedback on what maybe is missing. And one of the cool things I thought about Ken Reed is that the idea was to win. His goal was to win. Mm-hmm. And then when you're a kid, that's the point. Do you think that's been missing from Alpine Canada a bit? Is that just the idea is the point is to win? Yeah.
I mean, we have lots of complacencies where guys are on World Cup that haven't scored World Cup points for like 2 years.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not how they're on the wrong tour. But then we have financial constraints where we don't have a Europa Cup team right now, right? So I don't know. It's tough.
A bunch of pieces to the puzzle, I suppose.
Yeah. There's no easy solution. I think there's always going to be a rebut for each action created and done, and I don't really want to sit here to say that somebody should have done this or that, because there's always a reason. Nobody's doing these. These are all smart people that are
it's easy to criticize.
Hired, and it's easy to criticize and be an outsider. They're trying their best, but money buys medals.
Do you think money would be one of the bigger things?
Money buys medals. I know the Austrians did a report on this study a while ago, and it was, I don't know what the numbers were, but they priced it together of what a gold medal costs.
Right.
And it's an astronomical amount. I mean, our coach always used to say in Berkey, he said, like hundreds of a second cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Like,
absolutely.
When we were like, yeah, we've got a balanced budget and we're doing okay. And he's like, yeah, but we didn't spend enough money to win races. You know that, right? Like whatever that is, if we have too big of teams or whatever it is, it's tough. And unfortunately, I think at the beginning of our careers, a lot of our budget, the Alpine men's speed team budget, got distributed to ski cross before it became, a leading medal winner. And then they get their money, and they never really came back to the team. I mean, the men's speed team kept a lot of the team afloat for a long time. But then once the money started drying up on our side, we never really got it back from anybody because they also didn't have money still, right? It's an unfortunate piece of the puzzle, but at the end of the day, ignorance is bliss, and it was better when I was younger and I didn't know as much, and people didn't talk to me about the inner workings of the federation, because I think it's, even when you get the information like we're talking about now, you only get half of it. If I applaud everybody for trying, and I applaud everybody for giving me everything they could to help me in my career, and they tried their best, and maybe some days they weren't thinking about me and they were thinking about somebody else, but that was their job description. So it wasn't like, hey, make Manny and Eric really good. It was like, let's figure out this whole team. Sometimes the fungibility of budgets was detrimental to our success, but who's to say that that's why the women aren't kicking butt right now on world champs and on the world tour. So it all pays forward, and that's the issue, is you never really get the result you need until later down the road.
I remember the analogy I think Mark uses, you got to just water the garden. The flowers don't grow overnight, and it takes time and money and investment. And
I think one of the hardest battles is that they just need to figure out how to streamline their athletes earlier, or how to figure out who's going to be successful. But then you have like a Ben who is a late bloomer, or there's lots of guys that are late bloomers. I mean, one guy that always, Didier Couche I don't believe he had a podium until he was 27 years old.
Yeah.
And he kicked butt forever, right? And he broke his leg at 27. He learned how to work really hard. He came back from it, and then was a winner every day. But he also showed promise because he was on the team till 27 without podiums on a pretty competitive team. So, but there's always an exception to the rule, and that's what wrecks budgets. I tell you.
Well, that's cool. What's next? Your ski business? That's coming up in the horizon? Maybe a comeback? Anything along those
No
lines?
No comebacks. I don't really know what's next. I'm just going day to day. I'm just enjoying it. School, putting together some ideas, some opportunities. Maybe we do this again some other day, and hopefully there's some more concrete opportunities that have come to fruition. And all in all, just living my life.
Too. That's,
If anybody wants to go sledding and ski touring, I would love to. I have a sled now, and I'm but I haven't found my crew. I need a weekday crew that wants to go ski touring. That's what I need. I need one day a week. That would be perfect. But other than that, everything is pretty tickety-boo in my life.
Well, appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Part 2, maybe part 3 when your next business is launched. We can good content for them. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you betcha. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. If you liked what you heard, check out rosebros.ca, where we will have upcoming shows. You can also find our coffee and chocolate there, where we plant one tree for every bag or bar sold through our partnership with One Tree Planted, a cool not-for-profit organization focused on global reforestation. Until next time, happy coffee drinking.